Hello, welcome everyone to episode 498 of Shahaknite. We're pleased to be we're pleased to have a presentation this evening by El Ramel and Emma Jasinski from the Design Trust Chicago, and they're here to talk about Mapped Chicago, making a people's pathway for engaging design. I am Michael Klodek. I am one of the co-hosts this evening, and I am being joined by...
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Spencer, and I'll be your other co-host this evening.
Great. So I will quickly go through our agenda here. So we've started our live stream now. We'll go through, Ryan and I will go through some announcements here, and then we'll get started with the presentation around 7:10, 7:15. And we'll have the presentation until about 7:35, and then we'll have a Q&A. So while you're watching the presentation on YouTube Live, if any questions come to you, please type them in the chat feature of YouTube Live there, and Ryan and I will field those questions then during the Q&A. And then we will wrap up at 8 o'clock and head over to the Zoom call for the three-word introductions, some additional announcements, and then break out into the breakout groups at 8:20. There is code of conduct, so please check that out. That applies to presentation, Q&A, breakout groups, all throughout the evening.
Okay, so first announcement. So if you haven't already done so, please join the Shahaknite Slack channel. This is a really great way to stay connected to the community. There's a lot of different channel options where you can introduce yourself, talk about interesting topics, and I think my favorite is probably the water cooler. So definitely check them out.
All right, and volunteers make Shahaknite happen. So we are always looking for volunteers. Ryan and myself are, as co-hosts, are volunteers. Josh in the background show running this whole presentation is a volunteer. So we're always looking for more people to co-host, help out with things on both remote and then also when we have in-person events, and there's lots of opportunities. So if you're interested in helping out, you can take a look at the CHN volunteers channel on Slack, or talk to a board member such as myself or Josh or other volunteers like Ryan.
Okay, and our demographic survey. So if you haven't done so, please fill out the survey. This information is kept internally and just helps us with our DEI initiatives. So it's very quick and easy, probably will take you less than a minute to complete.
And you didn't know yet, you can still get some more COVID tests if you haven't stocked up on those yet. So you can just go to covidtests.gov to order some more.
Okay, and then we have a few exciting upcoming events. So Devin Bronstein with Chicago Digital Equity will be here next Tuesday at 7:05. We will have no Shahaknite, so happy 4th of July to everyone. And then we'll have an in-person event on 7/12 to celebrate the 500th episode of Shahaknite. So keep up and join us. It's gonna be really exciting.
Yeah, and as Ryan said, coming up on the 12th of July is going to be our 500th episode. So we have a very, very special guest or guests that evening, which is going to be you all. So we are bringing back lightning talks. So if you have been involved with Shahaknite, either as a presenter in the past, in a breakout group, or involved in any other way, and you just want to talk about how Shahaknite has changed you or changed your organization, we would love to hear from you and have you just give a brief little 3-minute lightning talk on how Shahaknite has impacted you. So there is a blog post up on our website for more information, and you can submit your idea for a lightning talk by July 7th.
Okay, so become a Shahaknite member. So I'm a Shahaknite member, Michael's a Shahaknite member. It's really great and allows you to do things like run for the board of directors, vote to change the bylaws and policies, and also just make decisions and make your impact here at Shahaknite. So quick and easy, click on the link and apply to be a member.
Awesome. And like I had said earlier during the agenda, so after our presentation and after the Q&A at 8 o'clock, we'll have the post-presentation Zoom call. That is a link, that bit.ly link there. We'll also post that in the chat later on. So you can hop over to that Zoom call at 8 o'clock for intros, announcements, and breakout groups. And just a reminder, the code of conduct will also apply to that post-presentation Zoom. So check that out if you haven't before. I think with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Elle. Thanks, Elle, for joining us and talking about Map Chicago.
Thanks everyone for having me, and congratulations on almost 500. I'm looking forward to tuning in. Hi everyone, it's so nice to meet you. My name is Elle Ramel. I'm the co-founder of a new organization called Design Trust Chicago, and we were founded in 2020. A little background is I just told Michael, I love Shahaknite. I've been coming since I was in the mayor's office in 2013, so it's a long time. And I just know that every time I had a question about permits or business licenses, there was always someone with a data set and knowledge. So thank you all for being here and being so helpful. So today I'd love to talk to you about Mapped, and I can share my screen. So Mapped is one of the projects of Design Trust Chicago, and Design Trust, and if you hear some crying, it's my daughter going to bed. Design Trust Chicago is the first community design center for Chicago. We believe that all citizens should be provided the right to design. So we facilitate. So what inspired Mapped? And what is mappedchicago.org? So this is Mapped Chicago, and it's essentially Chicago's public platform for showcasing resources for communities to advance their design and planning initiatives by mapping ideas, projects, people's plans, and organizations. So right now we're just Chicago, but someday the world, so stay tuned. Might be a question for you in my breakout later. And as you can see on the left, we can sort by typology, category, neighborhood designer, and year. Currently think of this more of the Wikipedia entry versus the IMDb entry. So this is all volunteer-led. We do trainings on volunteer editors, and then we host Maptathons, and we're hoping to show everyone in our breakout today what a Maptathon might be. You can also host a Mapathon, and it's really just getting as many community design projects as we can onto Map Chicago, with the hope that eventually you're in Woodlawn, you want to know more about all the projects near you, and you'd be able to search your handy dandy Map Chicago. So what questions guided Mapped website's design? So we worked with Span Studio, and we were really concerned about having a friendly user interface, but also a rich backend data. So how do we make this resource accessible and useful to community members and organizations? What are references or best practices for database and mapping resources? And what makes design legible, compelling, and friendly when building web platforms? I think one thing we've all seen is data sets are, not great if you can't maintain them. So how do we maintain that community momentum? Hello, Emma. So nice to see you. Welcome back from your flat tire survival.
Hi, everyone.
Emma, I wanted to just pause if you wanted to just give a brief introduction of before we start teaming up on this presentation of kind of what role you play Design Trust Chicago right now.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry for my absence, everyone. I guess Elle filled you in on tire troubles, but I'm glad to be here now. I am the community designer at Design Trust Chicago, leading and co-creating equitable spaces with nonprofits, local municipalities, neighborhood associations, just connecting designers with those different groups to create and design spaces that are centered in their organization's vision. So, and one of the projects we're working on here is Map. So I'm sure Elle kind of shared all of the some of the background. So I'll just let her jump back in, and I'll kind of share some items later on in the presentation. But happy to be here. Thanks, Elle.
Of course. And just realized we'll go in a little more into Design Trust Chicago and the design program services as well, because we just jumped in there with this. You guys are probably like, what the heck are they talking about? So, all right, so where were we? So in fall 2021, we coordinated a working group. We had architects, community activists, community-based organization leaders, really talking about what does design mean, and what are kind of the projects we might showcase in a tool like Mapped. You know, I think one of the things to talk about today, and I'd love to hear from the Shahaknite community, is design is in a lot of different real estate projects, placemaking, activations around the city. But if you like search like community design, it's not always like popping up at the town halls. So we did talk about like, how can you recognize design? Like, who are the firms that are creating these? Who are the community groups that are helping foster those projects? In development, in winter 2022, we worked, so like January, February, we worked on the database workflow. So again, like what are the fields we're populating? How do we map them across the city? How do we not make it, you know, how do we make it legible? And we launched the website in spring 2022. But I will show you a little demo right after this, and you can tell it was nowhere near comprehensive for all the amazing projects you're walking by and like the things that are happening. And so if you were here spring, summer 2022, asking for everyone's help, like if you want to come along the Mapped Chicago bandwagon, we're here and we're happy to have you. We'll bring snacks and lemonade. And so really looking forward to just seeing your ideas, also just like the UX and anything you've got for us about like, very open to how this works and could evolve it. And so what kind of projects can be submitted? We wanted to make it comprehensive, but really wanted to invest it in public and community design. And so we focused on public spaces and community spaces. So you might not see every residential building. You might not see every commercial building. We also wanted to point out places where there've been urban planning and urban design policies or kind of implementation, like corridors, resiliency plans, placemaking, additionally research and studies. One thing that we really heard from the working group was, and my background is economic development, and I've been in a real estate firm. Every time you build a new building, everyone goes to like a neighborhood. It's like, what's been built here? Where are the research? Where are the studies? So we're hoping to make this a resource for people who are building new projects. You don't have to call every single community organization over and over. They've already told, like LISC, quality of life plan, they've already told the DPD. So we're hoping to create a space where it's centralized. And then guidelines and toolkits, whether that's like the outdoor dining, how kind of outdoor plazas work, design guidelines. So that will all be on Map Chicago. And so if you want to, and Emma, I think if you want to go into the details about this, and if you just tell me to move the slides, I think Emma's going to let you know, we'll walk you through like how you submit a project entry to Mapped, and then we can show an example.
Yeah, sure. Can I share my screen, Elle, too? Okay, awesome. So I'm actually, I don't know if she's jumped over to the actual website, but I'm gonna drive a little here. So how we can engage with more people and people can help activate mapchicago.org is by submitting projects. So as seen in the presentation, you have, when you go to the homepage, this is kind of what shows up. You can filter through if you prefer a list or images of projects that have been submitted. So we have about, submit, just 3 tabs. But if you'd like to submit a project, there's 2 ways. The first way takes about 20 to 30 minutes, and you'll be answering these 26 questions. So everything from, you know, what's your name, email, kind of basics of the project title, address, to highlighting who were the community partners, you know, showcasing designers of color, so BIPOC or ALANNA designers, and then lists of things like budget or who funded the project. Again, wanting to make work and these projects transparent for people who are looking to create or plan similar projects. So you can kind of get an overview here of what questions the form's going to ask you, but you can click here and the form is through Typeform. So if you're familiar with that format, you're just going to scroll through. So I think I kind of started to do an example one. My personal email. And then, so, you know, basic information. And if you go over to the right here, you can scroll down. It's going to ask you what type of project. So as Elle went through those different typologies, you can reference on our website. So again, say, oh, I think it's public space or maybe placemaking, I'm not sure, you know, in the about section, you can just reference, you know, what kind of qualifies a project. And again, it's important to kind of, we have these identifiers, you know, through titles of public, community space, urban planning, but also colors as a tool for users to help filter through projects in Chicago. So, you know, sort by community spaces. So far, we don't have too large of a catalog of projects as this is, you know, being piloted and starting to get activated. But so far, it looks like we do have a lot of community spaces. Guidelines, okay, we don't have guidelines yet, but a couple of placemaking, research. So again, something that's helpful for users to start to sort and find out information on a project that might be similar to something they're doing or trying to start. So with that, while there are 26 questions, it's not required to answer all of them. While, you know, we want as much information as possible. You know, if you can't find the budget of a project, we don't want that to deter anyone from submitting. A lot of that information, you know, isn't easily accessible, especially if you're not involved in the project firsthand. So while that's kind of the long form, we also have the option as for a project suggestion. So, you know, again, say you saw a project, you walked by it, or, you know, a project you're familiar with in your neighborhood and you're interested about it, you can submit a project suggestion, and that's only a couple of questions that should take you less than 5 minutes to answer. Again, you know, something that went into the design of this, wanting this to be friendly, conversational, inviting, playful, nothing too intimidating. So the language is like very conversational and yeah, basically just wanting to start a conversation with people or projects. So that's the tone we kind of or intentionally went with when it came to the design of this platform. Okay,
Emma, now that you're on this,
yeah.
I was wondering if you wanted to show everyone like
A
the
project?
boardwalk or just to
Yeah.
quickly zoom over.
Did you highlight a specific one, or?
I think it's the 75th boardwalk looked pretty friendly. It's right by the
Okay.
south side, little green.
Yep. Okay. So here's the 75th Street Boardwalk. So we have kind of a feature image that you'll submit through a form. So it'll just ask you to attach or link a photo, and then a little bit of information about the project. So 100 to 300 words, kind of summarizing what the scope of work was, who was involved, and kind of what it is. And then 2, we have, kind of the slideshow of different images. So murals, planters for landscaping, opportunities for seating in the neighborhood. And then at the bottom, we have this call out for, why are projects like these important? So, here local residents, business owners, and community leaders were deeply involved in all stages of the project, from the initial meet and greet to the construction of the boardwalk itself. So again, a project like this really centering community engagement, and the questions they're asking are being asked by the people who live in the neighborhood, and then those people are helping to actually do the work or come up with the solutions. So even diagrams too, anything that kind of helps highlight the work or illustrate the process, we invite. So then off to the side here, we have this list of information. So back to kind of the submission form and the questions that are asked about the project, all that information will then get populated here. And we've kind of been calling this our library card of information. So the typology, placemaking, public spaces, category, urban design, streetscape, timeline, 6 months, when it was completed, temporary. So it just kind of helps give a snapshot of what it takes to get a project like this completed. Someone who's interested in doing this work can kind of be like, oh, wow, look at all the design partners. I just thought maybe it'd be 1. Well, this project has 6. Not to say that all of them, but 2 just gives you some ideas or an example of how to kind of move forward with a project like this. And then also, these link to all these different designers or organizations. So again, connecting people so that they can maybe reach out to these, stakeholders for some thought leadership in pursuing work like this. Okay, so I will stop sharing and go back to the presentation. Maybe.
Thank you, Emma.
Yeah.
The other thing I would just add, everyone, and we just detailed how you can get involved. The other thing that we're working on refining is we're really grateful for our volunteer editors. So while you are submitting a project idea or you're fulfilling the whole type form, we have a group of really invested trained editors. If you're interested, please come reach out to us to sign up for our coming training sessions, but you can get trained where they go through the material submitted, indicate what's missing. And you can also host your own Mapathon, potentially some Design for Chicago funded pizza and LaCroix. So you can also request to host one, whether it's at your neighborhood organization, whether you and a couple friends want to sit in silence and look up things in Chatham, which I've done. That can be fun too. You can also play a game where you put random design projects face down and race. I'm just inventing things now, but that's kind of where we are now. And we'd love to come to Shahaknite for 2 things. 1, to talk about this opportunity to be involved with Mapped more. But we also realize you guys are valuable. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people who come to Mapathons of how do we engage the architects and community groups that use this tool? How do we encourage that people use this in their work streams? So we'll bring these questions to the breakout group, but we would love to have a kind of discussion about the interactivity about our project and how it can be more improved. You guys have seen a lot of interfaces, so we thought we'd come to you guys. And then finally, we wanted to thank our MAP supporters. We had a really invested working group to envision and framework this idea, Span Studios for design and UX. And then, of course, thank you to our funding sponsors, the Grant Foundation, Chicago Community Trust. And thank you also for Shahaknite for just being a wealth of knowledge and a great community to be involved with.
Great. Thank you so much, Elle and Emma. Glad you were able to make it, Emma. Right. So I think I have a few questions coming in. I guess just to start, sure, one of the questions I had too here was, can you say a little bit more about kind of who you see as like the primary audience for Map Chicago? Is it, primarily like community organizations, like organizations would be using it, or do you see it more like individuals using it, or who do you kind of see as like the kind of primary audience for it?
I can start off, but I'm also interested to hear Elle's perspective as she was kind of part of the genesis of this project. But I'm glad you asked this question, because I think we need to like come up with tiers of how we kind of prioritize or organize this, because it's such a great tool, and it has a large reach, but it does need to be like customized a little bit for different groups. So when I'm saying that, I guess how I've looked at it a little bit is how we're almost hosting these mapathons. So as Al mentioned, anyone can host a mapathon. So basically it's, giving a presentation and then having these breakout groups to help submit projects. So with that, I think one would be organizations, community organizations, using the site as a reference in order to like figure out how to kind of make their projects happen. So one, just using it as kind of like precedent studies. And then also I would say, youth using this too, as like just a tool for education, but also a skill for, learning how to be an editor and kind of documenting and how you give credit and storytelling. So I think there's kind of this youth community organization, and then like designers, people, urban planners, anyone who's done this project, this is a platform to kind of share and connect. So those are kind of the three, and I just see this website as a connector for those. So depending on how people kind of want to use it, it's connecting them to others or to other projects or resources.
Thanks, Emma. We were very inspired by Stacy Linda's work with MapCore too. So I think the idea of documenting community assets in the frame of design was desired. And I think I also come from just the lens of having to do, I guess, the quotation mark, like asset map of a neighborhood, and just having a space where there's a little more equity of like, if you don't have a huge marketing, like a lot of times the big marketing budgets or the flashier projects get a lot of time. So getting a way to zoom onto a neighborhood layer and looking at like everything that happened. One of our founders, Catherine Darnstadt, runs the Boombox, like little pop-up shops in Chatham. And, people were calling her about, hey, do you know what happened in 75th Street at the Boardwalk? Like before they were making it, they're like, anything else happened on 75th? And she had to like use her like historical knowledge of her brain to be like, okay, this project has happened. A lot of times design is like a Paleolithic like dig. There's like been a bunch of projects that have like happened on a street that are like temporary, or they were ideas. And so sometimes it's like, actually there's like 6 research studies you should look at. And like, they kind of just like, it'd be cool if they were just like nested like on 75th. So we also felt like everyone's just running around calling each other, hoping to find this information. So I think our dream would be like, you got one spot to check.
Nice. So one of the questions from our audience members is, so often residents may oppose some new projects. So for example, with gentrification concerns. So has that use case neighborhood opposition informed the resource design or process at all?
I think that's a great question. I think one thing with neighborhood opposition, or I mean, I don't know, I call it neighborhood organization because it could be opposition, it could be advocacy. I think one thing we wanted to, we were thinking about City Bureau too. They were an inspiration, empowering people to document like what's going on in their community. So I think also just having more understanding of like stuff is like, we have a dream of like things maybe that are going to permit or could be designed coming on, where neighborhood groups could be like, what the heck is this building site? Like, who did this? Okay, who else did, like, did they design something else in the city? Like, oh no, like that developer did that thing over in Chatham, I should call them. I agree, like Rain, it's like, you can almost like, it's not as, hopefully it's not as mysterious. Like, okay, I'm gonna trace this developer, I'm gonna trace this designer. So we did keep that in mind because sometimes it's like these projects just show up, like pop up a fence, and hopefully we can lend a little bit more light to that.
Thank you. I guess this might relate back to something you said earlier too, kind of with the archaeological nature of it too. Is there a plan for how long a project would stay on the map once it was completed, or at a certain point would it be removed from the map?
At this point, no, maybe 1,000 years, but I'll let you guys, I mean, maybe if it gets too cumbersome, but it'd be cool if it was, I was like, maybe there's a plan for like 1930 that could be on there. That's where my brain goes, like fire maps.
Yeah, kind of going with like metaphors too. As I've been explaining this project, I've been thinking of it as like something that's alive, that's growing because it is live. So I don't think we have a window, or that it's only going to be here. You know, part of this too was, you know, in urban planning or design, or whenever you're kind of mapping something, it's capturing a moment. And what's awesome about this is, you know, we're constantly updating or publishing projects, but people can visit it just like, you know, somewhat of a Wikipedia and edit a project, or hey, you know what, the budget was actually this, or, you know, I found out new information. So we hope that as more projects get published and we have a larger library, also projects will become more robust with information as people are using it and looking at it and kind of studying these things to be like, oh, you know, that's, you know, maybe there's more to add to that. And we have added, you know, on each project, you know, have edits, or, you know, are we missing information or something, like communicate that with us. And that's, as we're, you know, getting more feedback, that is something we want to hear a little more input from this audience, or try to establish a system or a process for a better feedback loop of kind of weaving in that information we get from users to just really get the most authentic and honest reflection of the projects being published.
Thanks for that. So kind of maybe thinking about the user. So is your focus on helping people use space more creatively, or are you talking of collecting data about community assets and plotting it on maps for one or more specific purpose?
I think so Ryan, I think the ethos of Design Trust Chicago is about capacity building and leveraging more ability to use spaces, or demystifying the design process. I think for this tool at the moment, it's more of an archival space, though I would be interested to talk to people about ideas they have for, you know, looking at opportunities in their neighborhoods or spaces that could be designed. We have a design service program application right now that's more about like, hey, I have this idea, I want this to be created. But I think right now this is about the record of, it's almost like we want to see what comes online and how we map it. But I love that the opportunity to think about like what could be there, or like visioning, that's like maybe Emma, something we put on our notes for some thoughts.
Great, thank you. So it's kind of a two-part question, maybe. So one is just a little more information. Can you say a little bit more about the editors and like who the editors are and what they do? And then I guess related to that is I'm assuming that the editors are kind of curating some of the submissions that get made to Map Chicago. And if so, like, is the idea that eventually there won't be editors and like any submission will just kind of get automatically added to the map, or will there always be some sort of curation process in the workflow?
Yeah, so right now, how the role of an editor is basically to transfer the data from those submission forms onto the back end of the website. So they're kind of this middle person right now, but also, you know, checking lightly, like fact checking, making sure proper credit is provided. So, you know, if somebody attaches an image, you know, searching and giving photo credit to that image, or, you know, links to whoever's involved in the project, you know, Instagram, Facebook, you know, anywhere we can share people's work. So they're doing due diligence in that way, in addition to the information that was just submitted in the form. And so they have access to the dashboard or the back end of the website. So what we've done so far is we've had editor trainings, and you can sign up through our website, and we do like an hour session. We set you up with access to a video of kind of going through how, you know, just the logistics of submitting the work to the website, and then kind of do's and don'ts from you know, just organizational, like file naming and things like that, you know, just trying to make the process accessible for people to do, and as they're kind of volunteering and putting an effort here, we just want to streamline that. So that's a little bit of kind of how that works. So, you know, we're offering these training sessions, and then we give them access, and they kind of have this toolkit of a Google document access to implement projects or publish projects. And then as far as it then, yeah, I think like the vision is to make this, you know, a site of the people and hand this off, you know, to like, we want people to host their own mapathon. So right now we're happy to provide presentations and support and guide, but really we're kind of packaging this. So if you want to take ownership of it, great, go for it. And we're here to help, but also if you're comfortable and feel confident and have kind of gone through instructional things with us, like we want to kind of hand that over. But right now, because it's early on, there's hand holding, we're learning a lot through this. So I think it's going to be a little bit before it gets to that, but we're interested in anyone else who's kind of launched something like that, lessons learned, because every time we do things like this, we learn a lot.
You know, I was like primary user, I got like homework. You know, another thing, Michael and Ryan or everyone, is that we have also recognized that we're not doing any scripting or scraping of like Department of Planning launches projects, and some of them would qualify as like an immediate like alert of something we should document. The other thing is that came up in a Maptathon that was live was, you know, certain architecture or design firms are going to start coming up a lot. So is there a point where we were like, maybe there's a person at each architecture firm, or there's like a ping of like, hey, we noticed there was a permit that went for, you know, affordable housing in Humboldt Park. Like there's a point where some of these firms are putting in more projects or community-based organizations. So we also don't have that network of like the organizations yet. So I think that would be an interesting functionality to explore of like, how do you build in those kind of like automatic upload infrastructures, or just kind of a ping through the network of something new is coming to said neighborhood. What is it? How do we document it?
Awesome. So can mapped editors communicate with each other to establish or discuss edits, sort of like Wikipedia?
Yes. And I need to, thanks for the question, Ryan. I think I need to go through like Wikipedia training, because after just doing this, it parallels, and I know that was part of the inspiration for some of this, but yes, they can. We have this kind of Excel, Google Excel sheet that everyone shares. So you can see how many people, or who's an editor, who's submitted projects. So we're trying to use this document as a way to ping each other or communicate. So, you know, you can say, oh, wow, Emma's submitted 4 projects. She might be a good resource to reach out to, or she might, have encountered, this question. In addition to, on this spreadsheet, there's an area for questions, and again, being live and kind of working through different iterations of this process. That's kind of where they communicate. But in addition, that's kind of one of the questions we're prompting, is like, how do we cultivate this community of editors, and what does that look like? What does that want to be? And right now, kind of just having a space that people have access to communicate, I think is good. And then that balance of like engaging with people, but not overwhelming, and things like that. So I think those are things we're working on developing, but for right now, that's kind of one of the platforms of communication, is just kind of through a shared spreadsheet.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's coming up here too is Design Trust Chicago exploring funding some hours or some compensation to some community-based organizations that are the stewards or originators of projects, where yes, I can submit a project, but I was sitting there. My example was Boxville in Brownsville, and I was like, I just want to call Bernard Lloyd and ask how much this project cost and how big it was. And so part of it is also a question of like, as we go forward, how can we empower people that are the visionaries and the implementers of like creating these projects more? So like the primary versus the secondary. So I think that's another question for the group as well, because I think that's something that's come up too.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next question is, what types of projects would not be accepted, or what would prevent a project from being accepted?
Well, I personally got some projects thrown out in the beginning. We haven't exactly figured out when we're doing this, but I was just throwing up, like, it came from real estate. I was like, this project happened and this project, and Paula and Catherine were like, it's public and community-based spaces for now, Elle. So I definitely got all excited about my, it's basically cool libraries under senior housing that I was really into, but we're not necessarily doing all of those yet. So currently but that's again up for discussion. But right now, I think really sticking to those community-based spaces.
And just to add to that too, Elle kind of highlighted, this being an archival space for, Catherine, one of the co-founders, her having to spew out all this information, for these kind of specific community public projects that don't always have a platform or, a place to showcase the work. Because a lot of these organizations, while they've made this awesome project, a lot of their focus is other work or services they're providing as a nonprofit. So I think too, it's to kind of help level the playing field as far as exposure of this work. So
I believe that may be our last question, unless we potentially get a few more in here at the last final 9 minutes that we have.
And I think Ryan, you had a question too. Did you want to?
Did. And
That's
I
a good
wasn't
question.
sure if it was already covered, but I don't recall it. I think
so.
I was just more so interested on like, I think I checked out the website and there was like some initiatives from other cities that were listed. And so I was just kind of curious of like what insights did you all take from those cities? I think one was maybe Los Angeles, maybe New York.
The Design Trust Chicago website, Ryan?
I was on the MAP website, so yeah.
Yeah, so I think that one thing, we were really inspired by the Center for Urban Pedagogy in New York, LA Moss in LA, and a couple other organizations. I think it really got to the fact that a lot of us felt the pain of, we do a lot of technical assistance, but people have to find an architecture firm, design firm, and we wanted just a comfortable space to learn about what's been designed in your city, how the heck do you do it, how do you get a rendering, how do you get a massing. I used to work at the city, like, unless you asked me a straight answer, I could not legally tell you yes or no. So I was like, very like, oh. So we wanted a place people could be like, I might do a farm, I might do a park. What do you think? Like, I want some greens, like we wanted a place where it was more comfortable, like a third space. So I think that's where we got a lot of inspirations from other cities. And so hopefully this is, a place where you can find a community designer like Emma, or we have a couple, different organizations or architects that can help. But I think that's where I felt the inspiration from other cities. Emma, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I mean, I was almost going to ask you a follow-up question. Well, because they're really great projects that are listed on the map. So one of them too the Neighborhoods Now toolkit in New York, I feel like really starts to go into more detail, like granularly about how some of these projects happened and really filtering specific components of a project, like seating, like, and flexible furniture, things like that. But also that was a project responding to kind of a certain moment. So all of these projects were really great, precedents for us, or just we were able to pull from, but also kind of given a certain context that they were solving for too. So then how do we kind of look at that for Chicago? So like Elle saying, like her experience in the city and other individuals in the working group kind of lending their expertise or past projects to kind of weigh in on how is this adapted for Chicago, and that's kind of the result with Mapped. So
Cool, thank you. I guess one of the kind of follow-up questions I had for Elle, you mentioned earlier too of like, there's probably a lot of like city data or like, the planning department or other departments within the city that are probably doing things that should be, on here as well. Has the city reached out to you, or from your previous connections with the city, have you like connected with the city? Like, are you in touch with and the city officials that you need to be, or how is that kind of looking?
More like, do I have the capacity to open the deluge? But we've partnered with the city in two ways so far that I think we'll pick up on. One is we did a lot of their corridor, like restaurant outdoor dining assistance with the city. We also did the neighborhood design guidelines, which we'll working on citing at the Map Chicago. But I think what we'll do going forward, Michael, is perhaps go to DPD and say, hey, like maybe the Invest Southwest sites, like centering in that, or projects that have been executed, let's say with the land bank sites, but getting a manageable data set, and also knowing that we have to filter, right? Like public or community spaces are different. But I think we'd love to start having those conversations with some organizations, because like that's just a faster. What's probably the most likely is going to Booth Hansen or SOM or Smith Group and talking to them about their public and community projects, because that's also like not as much data per firm, and we can probably make friends with like a firm at a time. But yeah, I think that we're kind of ready for that. Or roving mapathon, maybe the libraries, but really would love to get that a little bit more real time.
Thank you. Unless Ryan, if you have a last question, otherwise I think we can go ahead and wrap up.
I don't, but this has been very great and super helpful and interesting. Excited to dive into it a little bit deeper.
Well, thank you again so much, Elle and Emma, for talking with us about Map Chicago. And I think we will go ahead and put up a slide here, hopefully, with the link to the Zoom call. And hopefully that'll also get posted on the YouTube live chat. So you can head over there in just a couple minutes. And so we'll do intros and then a few more announcements, and then we'll go into the breakout groups. And it sounds like Elle and Emma will be there as well for breakout groups, so you can continue the discussion over there. And with that, Ryan, we can end with our famous saying. So,
I know, yeah, I've been away for a little bit, but I still remember that saying.
I know it really sticks with you, doesn't it?
Yeah, okay. So go
Go
forth
forth and have.